Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about something that oftentimes gets overlooked, but it is absolutely crucial to you as a realtor, which is communication. And I'm not talking about the usual tips that you hear, like being clear and concise, and I'm talking about mastering a level of communication that taps into the very core of human psychology, history, and as well as real world application to get you more high quality leads and as well as close more deals. And this isn't a video on how to talk to clients or how to write emails. We are going really deep. And we are going to explore the ancient history, biology, and as well as real world examples that can transform the way you connect with your clients. Now, the first thing that we'll talk about is the power of strategic questions. Now, let's start with some wisdom from ancient Greece. Now, you've probably heard of Socrates, right? He's the most influential philosopher of all time. And Socrates wasn't just about asking questions. He was about mastering what I call strategic questions. And what he understood is that the way you ask a question can completely change the direction of the conversation. Now imagine this in a real estate business. You are sitting down with a potential client, and instead of starting with the usual what kind of house are you looking for, you try this. When you imagine your dream house, what's the first thing that comes up to your mind? Do you see what happens? This is not a question, it is an invitation for them to open up, to share their dreams and desires. And it's no longer a transaction, it's a personal journey that you are taking with them. And this is where things start. They become to see you as someone who understands them on a deeper level and as well as not another realtor looking them to make a sale. They start to think of you as someone who understands them on a deeper level, not just someone that is trying to make a sale off of them. Socrates used questions not to just gather information, but to also guide people towards a deeper understanding of their own thoughts. And in real estate, you can do the same. And when you ask a client a question like, what does your perfect neighborhood look like? You are not just asking for a list. What you do is to guide them to visualize their future and to also paint a picture in their mind. And here's the thing. Once they already begin to visualize that, they're already halfway through buying. And it's about steering the conversation in a way that makes the client feel heard and as well as understood. And when they feel that, they are a lot more likely to trust you and as well as work with you. Now, let's talk about biology in communication. Now, let's move from an ancient story to something a bit more modern, biology. You see, us humans are wired to respond to stories. And this isn't just a nice to have skill, it's integrated in our DNA. For thousands of years before we had books or the internet, the knowledge was passed down through storytelling. And as you can see in the drawing right next to me, this was a person in 10,000 before Christ, when we didn't have books or as well as the internet. And this is someone in 2024 where we have the both of them. Now, before then, we obviously didn't have either of those. So what we did is to have storytelling in order for us to gain knowledge. Now we have internet and as well as books. So obviously it's way easier for us to get more knowledge now than it is then. And since the books were invented in 500 BC, this means for at least like 9,500 years, the only way to gain knowledge is through storytelling. We are more likely to pay attention to storytelling than is for us to pay attention to either the internet or books. And stories are how we make sense of the world, like how we connect with others and how we remember things. So how does this apply to real estate? Now, let's just say you're meeting with a potential buyer. Now, instead of diving straight into the features of a property, like how many bedrooms, what square footage it is, let's just start with a story, right? Like maybe tell them about a family who found their perfect house and how it changed their lives. For example, it could be like, I had a client a few years ago, a young couple with a small child, and they were looking for a house where their daughter could actually grow up, play in the yard, and feel safe. After a lot of searching, we found the perfect place. I'll never forget the look on their faces once they walked into the backyard and they see the daughter running around and laughing. They knew right then that it was their home. Now, that story does something that facts and as well as figures can't. It will create an emotional connection. It will help your client visualize their own future in that house, and that's really powerful. And biologically, our brains are more engaged when we hear stories. Like when you share a story, especially one that resonates with your client's desires, you're not just going to give them information. You are going to give them a vision of what their life could be like. And once they can visualize themselves into the house, they are much more likely to go ahead and go forward with the purchase. And think about it. Have you ever been into a situation when someone tells you a fact and you forget about it like 5 minutes later? I know I have. But when someone shares a story with you, do you not remember it for like months or even years to come? I do. And that's because stories will trigger emotional responses, and emotions are what drives us to make decisions. And in real estate, your goal should be to connect with your clients on an emotional level. And when you do, you'll find that the number of leads you generate and the quality of those leads will skyrocket. Now let's get practical. We've talked about strategic questions and as well as storytelling. But what about when you're actually in a conversation with a client? This is where active listening and empathy come into play. Now, most people is that they are good listeners, but the truth is that most of us are just waiting for our chance to talk. And in real estate, that's a huge mistake. And active listening isn't about hearing what the words are. It is about understanding the meaning behind them. And once a client says, I want a house with a big yard, and what they might be saying is, I want a safe place for my kids to play. And when they say, I need a house with a lot of space, they might mean, I want a space where my family can grow and make memories. And your job is to pick on those cues and dig deeper. And you need to also ask follow-up questions to clarify what they are saying. And most importantly, show them that you are truly listening. And something like, it sounds like you are looking for a place where your family can really put down roots. Can you tell me more about what that looks for you? This not only shows that you are paying attention, but also shows that you care about them. And here's the thing, when clients feel heard and understood, they will be more likely to trust you. And trust is everything in real estate. And it is exactly what will turn a lead into a client and a client into a lifelong referral source. And empathy goes in hand with active listening. And it is about putting yourself in your client's shoes and understanding their emotions, concerns, and also desires. And this is where most realtors miss the mark. They are so focused on closing the deal that they forget about connecting with the person in front of them. And let me give you a real world example. My client's client was once really incredibly stressed about selling their house. Like, they'll live there for 20 years, they raised the kids there, and they had countless memories. And this wasn't just a transaction for them, it was a really huge emotional uphill. So instead of focusing on the side, they took the time to actually really listen to their concerns and empathize with their situation. And they talked about their memories, the fears about moving, and what they were looking forward in the next house. And by the time they were finished, the client wasn't just ready for sale. They were super excited into moving into the next chapter of their lives. And they trusted our client to guide them through it because they had taken the time to understand and empathize with them. Now let's talk about building trust and as well as authority. When we talk about communication, we are not just talking about exchanging information. We are talking about influencing decisions. And we do that effectively by building trust and as well as establishing authority. Now, let's start off with trust. Trust is built with consistency, transparency, and as well as reliability. And when you say you'll do something, do it. And when you make a promise, keep it. And when you're being transparent about the process, whether it's the pricing, the timeline, the potential challenges, you're showing that you are trustworthy. But here's where most people go wrong. They assume that being trustworthy means always agreeing with the client or always being positive. And the truth is that truth is also built through honesty. And even when it is uncomfortable, if a client has unrealistic expectations about what their house is worth, or if they are looking up at properties outside of their budget, you need to be honest with them. They might not like hearing it, but they respect you for it. And respect is a key component of trust. Now, let's talk about authority. Authority isn't being the most dominant person in your room. It is about being knowledgeable, confident, and as well as professional. And when you can demonstrate your expertise, whether that's through your market knowledge or negotiation skills or understanding of your client's needs, you're establishing yourself as an authority figure. And when people are more likely to follow advice of a person that they perceive as being an authority. And one of the best ways to establish authority is through education. And don't just tell your clients to do. You need to educate them on why it is the best course of action. For example, if you're advertising a client to price their house on a certain level, explain the market data that supports your recommendation. For example, show them recent sales, discussion trends, and as well as help them understand the logic behind your advice. And this isn't just about giving them information, it's about empowering them to make informed decisions. And once a client feels educated, they feel more in control, and they are more likely to trust your guidance. And another powerful tool to establish authority is social proof. Like, for example, share testimonials, success stories, and case studies that demonstrate your track record. And once client sees that others have had a positive experience with you, it reinforces your credibility and as well as authority. Now, let's talk about how you can actually implement all of this in your real estate business. Now, first, I want you to think about your next client meeting, whether that's in person, over the phone, or even through mail, how you can apply what you have discussed. You can start with the strategic questions, something that goes beyond the surface level and traps your client's emotions and desires. Then you think about how you can incorporate storytelling into your own communication. Maybe you share a success story from a previous client, or maybe you paint a picture on or how life could look like for them in the new house. And you need to remember that the goal is to create an emotional connection. Then you need to practice active listening. So this might mean putting away distractions, making eye contact, and really focusing on what your client is saying. But also it means picking up on the unspoken cues, the emotions and concerns that they might be hiding beneath the surface. And don't forget to empathize. Show your clients they understand the situation, the fears, and as well as their hopes. And finally, you need to work on building trust and as well as establishing authority. So you need to be consistent, transparent, and honest. Educate your clients, empower them with knowledge, and also use social proof to reinforce your credibility. And if you leave with one thing, let it be this. Communication isn't about just exchanging information. It is about building relationships, is creating trust, and as well as influencing decisions. And when you can master this, it will attract more leads, more high quality leads, and also will help you close more deals. Well, if you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.